Money makes the world go around, but what if you are stuck without any? I'm Annalise Borges, and on this episode of The Stream, we look into social media as a learning ground for financial literacy.
Stop acting rich. You don't have any stinking money. Act like a broke person. Why? It's easy. You're a broke person.
In 5, 6, 7, 8, I am ready to give up.
So my total income from my two jobs would be $2,800 roughly.
Did you know that once you reach your first 100K, you're actually 1/3 of the way to $1 million?
50% of your income towards needs, 20% towards savings, and 30% towards wants.
No spend September. Update. Not doing well so far.
Today, my kids' rent is due, so let's collect their payment. Each week, they get paid £5 for the chores they do around the house. As this is something schools don't teach kids, and we wanted our kids to learn about expenses and bills in a safe environment, and this has worked amazingly.
What does financial independence mean to you? While millions of people worldwide are struggling with a global cost of living crisis, many are working towards getting their money sorted, becoming debt-free, and maybe even building some wealth. And like with most things these days, people are turning to social media for help. But is it safe to share so much online or follow strangers' advice? To discuss, we're joined today by Leila Cardfrush, a YouTube content creator and consultant joining us from Atlanta, Georgia. Michael Harron, a musician who's also sharing his financial decisions on YouTube. He's joining us from New York. And Joe Woodhouse, a financial advisor and the managing director of Family Wealth 101. He joins us today from South Yorkshire in the UK. Thank you all so much for your time. I would like to start this show by getting your personal story here. I mean, Leila, you've shared your journey to become debt-free online. What made you decide to publish that information, your financial information on YouTube, and how did it feel?
Yeah, so I saw other people doing it, and it was really motivating for me. So I was thinking, I'm doing it anyway, so I might as well document it and help to educate other people, kind of break that barrier around the taboo of finances. And it really held me accountable and motivated me too. So it was just a win-win altogether.
And Michael, I believe you were following Leila, or at least you learned some things from her, which I found very interesting. You started organizing your personal finance with the help of social media as well. Can you share with us where you are right now? Where do things stand for you at the moment?
It's really interesting because from this standpoint, they don't sound great, but they're much better than they were before. I just finished bankruptcy because I had so much debt that I've been, budgeting and following people like Leila on social media and then sharing my own journey. I found myself realizing if I'm going to get have anything ready to go for retirement, I needed to take some big steps. So bankruptcy became what I wound up doing.
And we will ask you more about that, but I also want to get Joe in here because, Joe, you've been advising people on precisely that, how to get their finances in order, amongst other things. Why did you decide to do that online and on social media?
So it started about 6 years ago when my twin boys were born. And I've been in this industry 20 years, so I knew then was the time to increase my life insurance. I knew then was the time to start planning for their education. But I just thought, what will new parents sort of search for at that time? And everything I found either took me to a little bit of information and then a sales page to put your information into, or a 30-page document full of jargon. And I've always been very passionate about taking... Someone said to me when I was 18, if you can't explain something to an 8-year-old, you don't really understand it yourself. And it's a philosophy that I've continued throughout my entire career. So I just thought that there needs to be somewhere where people can sort of gain this information, because finance isn't as complicated. A lot of the things aren't as complicated as people in my industry, people like me, like to make you believe. And it don't win me any friends when I say this, but in my opinion, the financial services industry is built that way. it's full of jargon, it's full of noise, it's full of BS in a way to make people like me sound more important and more intelligent than we actually are and keep the consumer at arm's reach. So I just started sharing sort of little tips and hacks online of what people can do to get themselves in a position before they really need to employ anyone like myself. And it sort of just grew from there.
30-page documents full of jargons is exactly how I feel every single time I try to read anything about financial decisions or investments and stuff. That's exactly what I find. And Joe, would you say that the internet is today the #1 source for people looking for finance literacy, and especially social media?
Yeah, I would say so. But at the same time, you need to be careful on what you consume because everyone's an expert. And listen, I'm far from perfect. I've made my own mistakes along the way. And that's something that I've always been very open in sharing. Especially in my 20s, I did some very stupid things with money, as most of us do. But everyone seems to be an expert at everything these days. And I suppose that's the danger of social media, that you have all these armchair experts. So things like trading and people selling trading courses online, people telling you that to put your life savings in a certain cryptocurrency and things like that. I do think a lot of it you have to take a common sense approach with, and you have to filter through a lot of the rubbish out there to find, one, someone that you can resonate with, and two, someone that actually knows what they're talking about and that's sort of experienced it and done the role themselves.
I'm really glad you're bringing this here from the start, because indeed the finance literacy community online is quite huge. And one of the best known names in this corner of the internet is American radio host Dave Ramsey. He has a YouTube show where he accepts calls from people in financial trouble and gives them advice. His Baby Steps and Financial Peace University program have become very popular over the years. Here's what he suggests for building wealth. Take a look.
If you have $1,000 already, great. Just set that aside. That's your baby step 1. Baby step 2, you should be debt-free, but your house. Now, you may have to sell a stupid boat. You may have to take an extra job. But most people that have followed the Total Money Makeover baby steps in Financial Peace University are debt-free inside of 2 years.
And then we can move on to baby step 3, where we save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a fully funded emergency fund.
Now you're ready to build wealth. But that you just now have gotten up to ground zero. You've just now gotten up to even. When you have that emergency fund and you're debt-free, now you're ready to build wealth. And in baby step 4, you put 15% of your income aside into good growth stock mutual funds in retirement plans.
Leila, your thoughts on Dave Ramsey's steps or methods here for saving money and building wealth for the future?
Sure. So I think Dave Ramsey is good for certain people. His content is a bit dramatic, I would say, and kind of just black and white, and finance is not black and white. So there's no one size fits all when it comes to finances. So yes, his program definitely works for a certain amount of people. If you follow it, you probably will have, some financial success with that, but it does not fit for everybody. And I know, even speaking for myself, I did listen to Dave Ramsey when I was first starting my debt-free journey. That was very motivating for me, and I learned a lot, and it was kind of just educational/entertainment content for me. But at the same time, I really wanted to still enjoy my life while I was paying off my debt. And, certain things came up while I was on my debt-free journey, different emergencies that $1,000 wouldn't have covered. I still wanted to travel. I still wanted to, he's always like, no restaurants unless you're working in one, only eating rice and beans. Like, that's not something I was comfortable with. I didn't want to go that extreme, but I think he makes good content for certain people if you want to follow that.
And I must say, I agree with you. The $1,000 emergency fund, I was like, wow, $1,000 doesn't sound like a lot. But there is a lot of very interesting aspects there in his method. Of course, there's a whole list of steps that you need to follow, and people can find more information about that. But something else that I must be very open here. I was not very familiar with so many of the acronyms that are talked about and used in these conversations. And here's one that kept coming up when we started researching for this show.
Okay, so for those of us who don't know, FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. The FIRE movement was born in 1992 and requires users to save money aggressively, like 70% of their income. Once their savings reach about 30 times their yearly expenses, about $1 million, they may quit their jobs and retire earlier than traditionally possible by living off of the investment income from this savings. These are often regular people far from the highest tax bracket who do things like live in RVs and never go on vacation and cut all discretionary spending. I don't FIRE personally because it's not a sustainable solution for me, but there is something that we can all learn from the FIRE movement. Save as much as possible and invest it so your money can work hard for you, because you'll hit your financial goals a lot faster than just working a 9 to 5.
Right. Michael, your thoughts on the FIRE movement? I mean, living in an RV and never going on vacation sounds like a lot of fun. Are you a fan of that method? And is it sustainable?
It's, from my point of view, it's kind of tough for me to even consider that, because I'm 55 and I'm trying to get to a place where I can retire at like a regular age. But even like as a younger person, I don't think that was something that would have been sustainable for me. Just because I'm a person that I really have a challenge with like managing my finances to make things work. Lately I've been like checking my bank accounts, balancing everything on a daily basis, because I have a habit of spending outside of my means and impulsive spending. So for me, I don't feel like it would be sustainable, and it'd be something that would cause me to give up and just go the other direction and just do whatever I want.
Just run, basically. Thank you for being so candid, because even that, I don't know, maybe it's because you guys have been sharing your journey online, but it's kind of hard to say I spend beyond my means. Like, just kind of put that sentence out there and be open about it. It's not something that people do it very easily.
Yeah, I feel like I try to be especially open about it, because part of what my journey was realizing that I had so much shame about my financial mistakes over the years, and it was making me continue to make them. And being open and honest about where I'm at, I hope it empowers me, and I hope it empowers other people to sort of start getting honest and learning how to do things differently.
Joe, I wanted your take on whether this is for everyone. I mean, in this current economic climate where we see so much wealth, but also so much poverty, there's so much inequality in the world. Would you say it is still something that is possible and virtually accessible to anyone? Let's consider that under brackets here, to just retire early and live off some kind of passive or dividend income?
I don't think it's possible, but you need to put a structured plan in place. And as Michael said himself, the FIRE movement, it's just a buzzword that were born on the internet.
Okay.
And from my experience, I've been helping families for 20 years with financial planning. And the two biggest mistakes I see are, one, people overspending, or two, people trying to oversave. And ultimately what happens is, if you restrict everything else in your life, at some point it's going to pop. And it's all good and well putting 60-70% of your income away for 12 months, but then if you hit the if you then come down with a crash landing after that, it'll end up taking you 10 steps back. Because I've seen this happen before, especially in the Middle East. I've got a lot of clients out there where they don't do anything, they don't live, everything's put away for tomorrow, which again, I respect that completely, but those sort of people tend to leave after a year, 18 months, 2 years, and then they're back to square one again. So I do think you need to find a balance of one, and I always say save and then spend. So have a structured amount, leave your bank accounts the day after payday towards your savings, towards your investments for the future, and then live off what's live off what's remaining there. And that's your spending money for the month. So pay yourself first, but still you need to live for today. Otherwise, it's not going to last.
And also, I guess you need to put numbers on what you're trying to aim, right? You need to define what you're trying to achieve here. For example, what does it mean to be financially independent? And then how much you're trying to make and how far is that goal, kind of thing. I mean, and I don't understand anything about money, but that sounds like just getting organized and planning life. But even when people are trying to get organized, in some countries, like in the US, Canada, and the UK, young people are dealt a really bad hand in the sense that they get in huge debt before they even enter the workforce. And I'm talking, of course, about student loans. Many are taking to social media to share their actual debt amount and plans on how to pay for it. Take a look.
How much would you say you'll have towards the end of school?
Probably 50K.
I have under 10,000, but I have friends that have 40,000, so I can't complain.
After I finish my degree, I will most likely have to spend a lot of time trying to find money to settle my debt. And at the same time, I will also have to delay all my major life decisions.
When I signed up for the loan, the interest rate was at 7%. So not only was 7% interest building while I was in school, but by the time I finished paying off the loan, which was only a year after I finished school, the interest rate was at 12%.
The monthly installments that you pay back once you graduate, when you get a job, is actually less than the interest added on to the student finance loan. So essentially what this means is that the university debt that you gain actually goes up rather than going down, even though you pay money into making it going down, which was the original intention.
Leila, I want your take here. Would you say student loans are the biggest challenge facing certain people, of course, that are affected by them, or are they still considered good investment? What is your take here?
I think student loans are a big challenge for a lot of people. But at the end of the day, ideally, you are taking out those loans for an education that will pay off. I think that's the problem, is sometimes people take out too much student loan debt, or a lot of people take out too much student loan debt and then struggle to find a job and pay back those student loans. I know, speaking for myself, I had 49,000 or so of student loan debt after graduating. And that was very intimidating because when I finished my master's program, I was struggling to find a job. So I knew something had to change. And looking back, I can say confidently that it was a good investment. But I think I definitely took out more student loans than I needed to. And I know that that wasn't a smart thing to do, but sometimes it's necessary depending on the path that you're going down. And that's for a lot of people. So I think it can be a smart decision, but is it the worst debt of everything? I don't think so at this point. I think more so credit cards and just careless spending is the major problem for most people here in the States anyway.
Michael, what was the hardest thing for you in this journey? Was it trying to minimize the spending? Was it conveying everything online and being so open about it and facing that shame and all those emotions? What was the hardest thing in your journey?
Honestly, I think the hardest thing for me was being able, there was a day probably like 3 years ago that I decided I need to figure out exactly what's going on with my money. And I made a list of all my debt. That was the hardest thing, like looking at the whole number.
What did it look like? What was in there and how hard was it?
The biggest part for me was IRS debt. Like I work for myself as a piano teacher and a musician, a bunch of different things. And I just never learned how to put money aside for taxes. I always wish I had a better explanation for I just didn't do it. But that's really what it is. And that number got up to like $60,000 because once I did start paying off the old debt, it was too difficult because I didn't know how to budget to put money aside for the current debt. And the number just kept building and building and building. So that was the hardest thing to get out from under and to learn how to handle. Just really Dave Ramsey I was thinking about it. Dave Ramsey talks about baby steps, but I feel like I really needed fetus steps to just learn how to look at my accounts and not mess it all up.
It's actually learning how to face it as well, right? Because when you're writing everything down and you're putting all those numbers there, you're like, okay, this is the problem. Now I have to look at it and fix it. And while on one side there are people sharing their actual budgets, talking about how many dollars and cents they spent for food, electricity that month, they also share their well-curated spreadsheets. They're tracking their debt payment and investments. That's on the other side. There are people who are giving tips on how to be more frugal, how to save money, and what to do with the extra cash they might end up with, like these.
track your spending, knowing where your money is going is the very first step to being able to save more of it. And so the simple act of doing this is going to put you further than most people in this age group. And number 3, work towards saving up at least 1 month of your living expenses.
First, for every dollar that you earn, 75% or 75 cents of it will be the maximum amount you can use to spend to buy things. Housing, food, vacations, Mr. Magic Lamps. If you can spend less than 75% of your income, that's fantastic.
You can use $1,000 to start investing. So $1,000 is a great way to buy into something like an index fund where you set up a well-diversified portfolio and you have started investing.
I don't even know where to begin when it comes to talking about investments and stuff. So I'm going to turn to the professional here. As Joe, you give a lot of advice to people these days. But what would be the one piece of advice you would give to everyone? So something that could actually fit pretty much everyone in the world. And we have a large audience in very different places, but it's a challenge. But what would be the one piece of advice in terms of saving the money or investing the money? How would you say that people should be protecting their future?
First thing that you need to do is actually work out what you're investing for. So get your goal and then work backwards from that. So whether that be your children's education, because you don't want them to leave university with all that debt, whether it be your retirement. So it's know what you want from life at that point and then put some numbers around it to work out what you need then, and then funnel that back to today. So if you need X amount in 15, 20 years, we can work out today what that means you need to be investing, what you need to be putting aside each and every single month over the next 15, 20 years in order to get there. And then you'll know very quickly whether you're on track or not and whether something needs to give.
And how easy would you say it is for people to set one goal? I mean, I feel like people want so many things in life, right? You want your kids to be debt-free, but you also want to have very nice vacations until you retire and post that. And you also want a very nice house. So is it easy for people these days to set one goal and to stick to it?
It's not easy. It's far from it. But if you want those nice holidays, if you want that nice new car every 3 years to continue, guess what? You need to pay your future self. And that means investing for the future. And like I said, the first step with that really is working out what you want. Mm-hmm. So again, most people need between 60 and 70% of their income in retirement. And a lot of people underestimate how much they will actually need. Because if you stop working at 60, 65-year-old, potentially you're going to be on this planet for another 30, 35 years. Where's that money going to come from?
And that is a long time. Leila, what advice would you give to people watching us today? Do you have one piece of advice that you feel was handed to you and it really worked well, or something that you learned along the way?
Yeah, what I always go to is tracking. I think tracking is very important. There may be a select few who don't need to track their spending, but I work with a lot of people and talk even just with peers who are like, oh, I think I spend, $400 on food out or groceries, whatever it is that they could be spending on. But then when they look at their actual spending numbers, it is double that or sometimes triple that. So if you're not paying attention to where your money is going, it's very easy to lose control. So I know for me, it's worked well, budgeting, but also tracking is very, very important.
I know it is, but it's for me the hardest thing to do. I hate tracking. I hate knowing how much I spent on things. Michael, final word from you. What is the most precious lesson you've learned in this journey that you would like to share with us today before we end the show?
I think for me, the biggest thing is not to give up. It'd be really easy for me at 55 with my, paltry retirement savings to be like, you know what, it's too far gone, forget it. But I can always improve my situation if nothing else. So don't give up, keep trying.
Don't give up. All right, I will get to it. I will get to tracking, I promise, and I'll look into those retirement plans, Joe. Thank you so much, Michael, Leila, and Joe, for your time. Thank you for being part of the stream today. And thank you all for tuning in. If you have a comment about this show or any of our episodes, you can talk to us on social media. Use the hashtag or the handle AJStream, and we will look into your questions and suggestions. Take care, and I'll see you soon.